Hey gang, I know it doesn't feel like a Wednesday. To me, all day it felt like another Monday, which we'd already had one this week. But after being off for the 4th of July, it seemed like a restart, like we hit Control-Alt-Delete, went back to Sunday. And so all day today I kept thinking, well, what do I expect? It's a Monday. But no, it's Wednesday. So guess what? That means it's Wisdom Wednesday time, and it's the first Wisdom Wednesday of the month of July. So we're introducing our new theme. If you've tuned in before, you know we start a new theme every month. Try to do something with the seasons or with the time of year. This month is no different. Our theme for the month of July is Make a Splash in July. And yes, that's an intended pun for go take a dip in a cool body of water, which has really been helpful the last couple of weeks. If you've got a pool or access to a pool or a lake, you know what I mean. It's been up near 100 degrees for almost a month now here in Austin, Texas, and so we're keeping it warm down here. So we're going to make a splash, and by that it means we're going to every week try to give you something that can make a splash in your personal health, in your relationships with other people, which is what we're going to be talking about today. If you tuned in last week, you know that we talked about bad breath and different causes of it and things you could do to take care of it. Today, we're going to talk about frenemies. And I got this just over the weekend off an article in the New York Times, not the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. And it was intriguing, the little headline that they had about it. So I went to the article and read the whole article, and it was very, very interesting. You know what a frenemy is? A frenemy is somebody who's friends with you sometimes, but then just as quickly will stab you in the back or talk bad about you, or somebody that treats you nice sometimes so you feel like they're your friend, but then they talk bad about you behind your back when you're not around. Or, you know, they treat you well and then they treat you poorly all at the same time. They call that ambivalent. When you've got an ambivalent person or an ambivalent relationship, you can have totally opposite feelings about them depending on the situation. They can be really negative or really positive, and you don't know which one to trust. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but that's what a frenemy is. Frenemies are supposed to be friends who sometimes help you and sometimes hurt you. They could be your in-laws who take care of your kids for you but criticize your parenting style while they're keeping your kids. I know a little bit personally about that. The coworker or boss that praises you or acts like your friend, but then says terrible things about you behind your back. And a lot of people, including me, would have thought before I read this article that, well, at least they're better than people that are just negative all the time. And actually, that's not so. This article, these two psychologists that wrote the article said spending time around people that are all negative all the time or that always treat you bad, you learn to put up a wall and you just don't hang around them much, or you don't put any stock in what they say because you know they never are going to like you. They're never going to say anything nice about you. Frenemies are more damaging because they're nice to you some of the time. They want you to consider them to be your friend, or them to be for them to be your friend, but then they stab you in the back sometimes when you're not around. So these psychologists found several examples which I thought you might find interesting. One group of adults had higher blood pressure after interacting with people who evoked mixed feelings, sometimes good and sometimes bad, than they did around people that were negative all the time or were positive all the time. Another instance in Slovenia, of all places in Europe, Slovenian police officers were subjected to a supervisor who supported them and then demeaned them all kind of at the same time. He gave them positive enforcement, but then he cut their legs out from underneath them. And these guys, they called in more often sick. They got they took more days off from work, and they reported negatively on that supervisor more than one who they compared to who was always negative. So the reason they found is that you want to try to trust these people that you like some of the time. So I thought this was an interesting paragraph. You might assume that with a neighbor or a colleague, having some positive interactions was better than having all negative interactions. But these psychologists found that it doesn't just buffer the bad feelings to be positive some of the time. It actually amplifies them, so that when you're around somebody who's nice sometimes and not so nice some of the other time, you don't ever know whether it's Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde that's showing up, and you don't know which one you can trust. Like, which one are they truly being? It said another factor in that unpleasant interactions are more painful in an ambivalent relationship is because it's more upsetting to be let down by people you like sometimes than to be let down by people you dislike all the time. And I found that to be quite interesting, because we've all been in those kind of situations. And so, it's one thing to bring up problems, but these guys actually went into what are some of the solutions. And I thought this was very interesting because Brene Brown now lives here in Austin part of the time, psychologist, counselor, and TED Talk author, and she's one of the people that tells you how to get your stuff together nowadays, but a very good mind about how to get along with people and what happens when you're not getting along. And her deal is being clear is kind. That's what she said in one of her several books. Being clear is kind. So that's what these authors said that you should do. Here's how you should deal with frenemies. You should try to be clear with them. Try to have a constructive relationship with them, and tell them that the way you really feel, that sometimes you feel like they're your best friend, but sometimes you've heard that they say negative things about you behind your back. Don't expect that kind of conversation to go well. A lot of people procrastinate on dealing with them. That same person calls you and says, hey, let's go to lunch on Tuesday. I want to catch up. And you say, I can't do it this week. I'm too busy. So you just kind of procrastinate and prolong things, but don't want to confront them. And other times, you just grit your teeth and bear it. If they're like the in-laws, that you've got to have a relationship with other family members. We all know that one person at Thanksgiving. That old saying that every Thanksgiving comes up. Every family has that one bad apple, and if you're sitting at the Thanksgiving table looking around and you can't figure out who it is, it's probably you. Like Brene Brown said, being clear is being kind, but my advice with these situations is exactly that. Try to have a constructive relationship with them. If you can't feel like you can say it to their face, write them a letter, write them an email, and tell them this has been bothering me for a long time, and I just want to tell you how I really feel. And if it ends the relationship, it ends the relationship, but you're probably better off than you would be with somebody who is negative with you all the time. That's what this research shows. So for what it's worth, careful of the frenemies. It's better, according to this research, to have a clear-cut enemy than to have somebody who's sometimes your friend, but you can't trust that they have your back. Health tip. Every week I give a health tip. Got any guesses on whether regular water or carbonated water, like fizzy water, we called it, or sparkling water, which is real craze right now, which one is better for you? Well, nutritionists say that both hydrate you equally. But the biggest difference, besides the cost of them, regular old water you can get out of a tap, it's free. Or Ozarka that you buy that's not fizzy water, it's still water. Spring-fed, whatever, but Fizzy water is carbonated. They force carbonation into it, and it's got a lower pH, so it's more acidic. So potentially, if you're drinking fizzy water all day long, over time it could lower the pH in your mouth and allow the bacteria that cause decay to do more damage than if you were drinking regular water. So keep that in mind. Either one is going to hydrate you properly, but you might try to mix in some of the regular still water with the fizzy water instead of drinking the fizzy water all the time. So just my 2 cents worth. That's your health tip for the week. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you again next Wednesday for another version of Wisdom Wednesday.